Hi, I'm Candace Grimion with RE/MAX Opportunities, and we're located in Fort Bend County, Texas. I've been with RE/MAX for 6 years, and prior to that, I was at a company for a couple of years that worked with developers, locating raw land for development purposes. At RE/MAX, I primarily work with farm and ranch land, both with large tracts and smaller acreage. So for my entire career, I've specialized in acreage properties that are raw or undeveloped with no homes or buildings on them. In my work with clients seeking to buy or sell raw land, I often have questions regarding putting a property under agricultural exemption to save money on taxes. Also, I continually have people telling me that the rules of agricultural exemptions have changed or are different from what I explained to them. And over the years, I always call the appraisal district to confirm that, in fact, the rules and the guidelines have not changed for the past 30 years. So here goes. It's a little bit of a dry subject, but maybe interesting to some of y'all. So first of all, many people do not know that exemptions vary from county to county. So for today's purposes, I'll be addressing exemptions for Fort Bend County, Texas, where I live and work. The rules in Fort Bend County are as follows. An agricultural use must be the primary use of the land. Also, a separate application must be requested for each account. Sometimes you have more than one account for different parts of a tract of land. The application period is from January 1st till April 30th of the year in which you wish to have the special appraisal. So when you purchase a property currently under ag, you must wait to file an exemption in your name until January of the following year, because the current year is going to be, you're going to be taxed under the same rate as the seller was for your portion of the tax year in which you purchased the property. And if the property was not in ag exemption when you purchased it, you must determine if it was used for an agricultural use for 5 out of the last 7 years. If so, in January of the following year, you may file for ag exemption in your own name. If the property was not used for ag in 5 out of the last years, then you must use it for an ag use. Document that use, and you may file for an ag exemption after the 5th year, proving the type of ag use that you had it in. So first-time applicants must be able to show proof of agricultural use for 5 out of the last 7 years. Here I will go into further explanation of what that means. Proof will either be showing that you have sold hay, cows, or done any of the other activities that qualify. If you have not owned the property for 5 out of the last 7 years, then you will need to obtain proof that the use was agricultural, which complies with Fort Bend County Appraisal District guidelines and rules. An example of this would be if you or the former owner have been using the pasture for hay production. You would need receipts or a lease signed by the person cutting the hay to submit with your application. Also, you would need to provide some sort of proof if you are leasing the property out to someone to comply with one of the approved methods of obtaining an agricultural exemption, and then submit that with your application. Additionally, a new application must be filed whenever there is a change of use or of ownership of any kind, and the chief appraiser may also request a new application. So a change of use could be changing from irrigated cropland to dry cropland, or from pasture land to native pasture land, or if you build a house on part of the property. If you purchase a piece of property that has no house on it, put it into ag exemption, and then want to build a home, you are required to take 1 acre out for a home site. Since an agricultural exemption must have a minimum of 25 acres for improved pasture or hay, the most common type other than cattle production, to qualify as a standalone exempt property, you can build on 25 acres and still qualify. However, one of the acres will be subject to rollback taxes and may not be ag exempt going forward once the house is built. So if the property is leased, a copy of the lease must accompany the application, and in the case of a verbal lease, an affidavit of lease must be provided verifying the terms of the lease. There are a number of different ways to satisfy the ag exemption for acreage, and each one has different requirements. So depending on which type you use, the required acreage varies, from 5 acres for pecan or fruit orchards up to 40 acres for native pasture. Of course, row crops are included, but only certain crops qualify in Fort Bend County. For instance, cotton, corn, milo, rice, or soybeans qualify as an ag-exempt row crop. However, you may apply for another crop type when you put in your application if you are planting a row crop other than those mentioned. For row crops, the minimum acreage is 20 acres. One thing that many people do not know is that if you have an acreage smaller than that allowed under the minimum acreage to qualify as a standalone exemption, you may get permission to use your property in conjunction with other acreage anywhere in the county, thus allowing you to take advantage of the ag exemption, meaning that you don't have to have a property that's right next to you or contiguous with yours. It can be anywhere in the county. In many cases, having your property in ag exemption can save you hundreds of dollars. It is important to note that if your land does qualify for an ag exemption and you change the use to a non-agricultural use, you will owe a rollback tax for each of the previous 5 years in which your land got a lower appraisal. The rollback tax is the difference between the taxes you paid on your land's ag value and the taxes you would have paid if the land had been taxed on its higher market value, plus a 7% flat interest fee charged for each year from the date the taxes would have been due. If you sell a parcel of land and the property is in ag exemption, most often the buyer who eventually changes the use will be required to pay the rollback tax. However, in real estate, this is a negotiable item. Additionally, if you purchase a parcel of land currently in ag and do not change the use, you may still remove it from ag exemption. If you do not change the use for 5 years, you can avoid paying rollback taxes altogether, but only if you do not use and do not change the use and begin paying non-ag use tax immediately. So let's see, what does that mean? If I purchased a piece of property where I had 5 acres and it's currently under ag when I purchase it, but I don't want to have to worry about rollback taxes, I'm okay with paying my taxes at the regular rate. So I could take the property out of ag in January of the first year that I own the property, begin paying the higher rate, in other words, not get an exemption, do that for 5 years, and do not build a house, do not do anything that would change the use, then you can actually avoid the rollback taxes. But you have to make sure you don't change the use, and you do need to be very careful when you do that. Now listen, these guidelines are meant for information purposes only. If you are planning to put a property under agricultural exemption, you should contact the Fort Bend County Appraisal District to verify your situation and ensure that you make all necessary steps to properly place your property in ag exemption. As always, I am more than happy to answer any questions you may have about agricultural exemptions or any other real estate issue. Feel free to call me at 979-387-2000. That's 979-387-2000. Thanks and have a great day.